Hi, and welcome back to Real Talk Fitness with AMPT. I'm your host, Ashley Cummins. For those of you that don't know, I'm a business owner of AMPT, a busy mum of two, and I also like to train at high levels in multiple different sports. Which brings me to today's episode is when should you approach a cut when you have performance goals? So before we dive in, this episode's going to be a little bit around if I have weight loss goals, but I also have performance goals and everything in between, what do I do and where do I begin? So let's dive in. I really wanted to base this episode around the science and the information about this. So it's important to filter out where you are in your journey. Are you someone that has a lot of adipose tissue? So using big words, that's just fat stores. Do you need intentional weight loss? Or are you someone that is on the smaller side with a bit more adipose tissue and needs more muscle mass? So what I refer to as skinny fat, so lack of muscle tissue or muscle density. So in today's episode, I really want to double down on the words that I'm using is because when people listen to this and take on board what I'm saying is it needs to be taken in the right direction, not from the emotional state that you're in terms of saying, I'm saying that you might be overweight or I'm saying this. This is just all of the science. And I guess it's a real good time to really dial in and have a look at where you are. What does your body composition look like right now? And what avenue do I need to take to better my goals? And remember, these are all done in phases. So as a lot of people have imagined in their head of what they want to look like, yet they don't understand the science behind eating for performance or needing to gain muscle or strength training, eating enough protein, and what choices that you need to make and in what process. So a lot of women tend to think they need to eat less, be thinner or smaller, rather than actually needing to eat more food and focus on gaining muscle for a longer period of time. So focusing on the strength and the muscle gain. So if you were to close your eyes and imagine your body with absolutely no body fat on you, what muscle do you actually have? Because that's the question, right? We all have this image in our head that we want to look a certain way, yet we chase a number on the scale rather than actually focus on what is that made up of and what do I actually need to intentionally focus on to get that end goal rather than just that number, right? Because we can all lose weight, we can all become smaller, but it brings me back to that skinny fat, right? Is that if you don't understand the nutrients that you need and the sort of training style that you need to get to your desired result, and actually being openly honest and having a good chat with a coach in terms of what does that look like and how long does this take, and showing up consistently, right? So the way the human brain works, kind of off tangent, but we constantly chase that dopamine. So that feel good. We want instant gratification for little work. But when it comes to building muscle or losing body fat, we don't generally get that instant gratification. It is depositing small amounts each and every day over long periods of time with an intentional focus. So coming back to the, when should I approach a cut and your performance-based goals and all that sort of thing is that we really need to dial in at where you are in your journey. And some of you might need to do a deficit or a cut, something like that in the future. But more to my point is that it's hard to get the look you're after if you don't have a structure of muscle underneath what you're trying to cut. So this applies to anyone. If someone has more body fat to lose, they don't have a lot of muscle mass, or that the body built underneath it of what they're trying to look for or the look they're going for, because you can lose a ton of weight and not really have that look. So that's kind of circling back to what I was saying before, is everyone should do strength training and eat enough protein in a way that supports and preserves muscle. So regardless of where you are in your goal, whether you're at a cut or whether you're eating for performance, we all need to do some sort of strength training for longevity of life. So your bone density, your muscle mass, and to support that nutrition-wise, we need to ensure that we're having an adequate protein intake. So then you have the people that you call like a normal body fat, or on the thinner side. These people generally don't need to diet as such. They just need to dial into their nutrition better. More structure in terms of increasing protein intake, pairing that with enough strength training, or having a season where they just focus on strength and muscle growth as a priority. And I guess that kind of brings me to, like, if you're got endurance goals like running or high rocks, but never actually spent the time investing in strength or muscle building, we don't actually have the engine behind us to support us, right? So the more muscle mass you have, the bigger your engine. And muscle requires fuel. Fuel is food. So many women constantly eat in a deficit, but yet they want their body to perform, or they want more toned muscle, or they want more strength, but we're not eating to fuel that goal because we're afraid of this number on the scale, right? So that's kind of leads me back and circles me back to like these intentional phases. So sometimes, there's got to be a little give or take. You do need to eat slightly in a surplus to fuel your body to gain the adequate muscle. So then we go into an intentional deficit to strip that body fat off and see what you actually have underneath the surface. So coming back to the performance goals is bigger engine, the faster it's going to go, right? So like if we're going to look at high rocks, for example, you need to have a good sustainability of muscle strength and endurance. But if we don't have the muscle there to build on, we're only going to be limited to what we have. So the question then would be, okay, am I going to see what I potentially can do with my current body and then going to look back and go, okay, what do I need to improve on? Is it strength training? Is it actually intentionally putting on a little bit more muscle? And now being female, this takes time. You're not going to lift a dumbbell up and gain 5 kilos. We don't have the hormone profile to gain muscle that fast. We don't have that high level of testosterone. So it's really important to focus on that, because a lot of people get caught up in is, I don't want to be bulky. And that is understandable. Everybody is entitled to their own values of what they want their body to look like. But I guess if you want your body to look a certain way, but you also want it to perform a certain way, there's got to be intentional phases. So the question is, do you really need another diet, or do you need to not diet and actually spend some time learning how to eat more regularly, increase your protein, and actually start to build a base? Because your base is that muscle. So as I said earlier, if you closed your eyes and you imagine your body with no adipose tissue, so no body fat, what are you actually left with? Do you have a good structure of muscle underneath that? Because sometimes we might need to speak to a coach or to work out where you are, then rather than always spinning the wheel and cut. Because again, our body is no different to a car, right? You can't expect it to go the same distance with less fuel all the time. Because then you also have these people that literally chronically diet or yo-yo diet. And my advice to you is, regardless of your figure, regardless of where you sort of are, figure out how to eat more normally. Listen to listen to your body and learning how to eat in a way that supports you, improves your dietary composition, increase the quality of your foods, and dialing into these behaviors changes and allows you to eat more nutritious, learn about protein intake, fiber, cutting out random snacking. These will help support your healthy body before you go into a diet phase, right? So there is certain parts of your journey that I like to call phases. So like on and off seasons, depending on what your goal is. If your goal is just to be generally fit and healthy, well, it's a matter of building that body, and that might mean we do a cut and you're not quite happy with the muscle tone that you have. So then that means that we need to look at eating to maintain into a slight surplus and really focus on your strength and muscle building program, because that's what it is that's going to give you shape. So it's not about so much chasing a number on the scale. So it's those that are constantly yo-yo dieting or cutting things out. My advice to you is learn how to eat more normally. Learn how to eat in a nutritious way and fuel your body in the way it deserves. So look at your behavior changes and learn more about why protein is important and how much protein do you need to generally preserve the muscle mass, right? Because without our muscles, our bones are dumb. They don't do anything. So you need a certain amount of muscle mass. And obviously strength training and weight training in general helps with your bone density. So all this being said, there is no rule to say when you should or shouldn't do any of these. But let's go into, say you have some race events coming up. When's the right time and when should you, stop eating in a deficit, and if you have performance goals? So my advice to anybody that's doing any sort of endurance sport, obviously the lighter you are, the faster you're going to be and the less pressure it's going to have on your joints overall, right? But it's not just about being light. It's about being light with a certain amount of muscle, so certain engine to allow you to go to your peak in these things. So unless you're training at a volume that is sort of, I guess allows you to stay in a deficit and still get those results. When you have performance, what generally happens with your training is we increase the volume. So increasing that volume to help with our performance goals. So whether it's running, for example, and you're increasing your distance and you're just getting that engine built over time, your body needs and requires fuel to rest, recover, and perform at its best. So question would be is, can I do that in a deficit? Well, yes, you can, but how your body is going to recover is going to be hindered. So you can only train as hard as what you can recover from. So coming close to a race, my advice would be it's not the right time to be in a cut because your body needs fuel. So example, if you already have a good endurance base, so anyone doing high rocks, you can comfortably run 8 kilometers and you're ready to just increase your volume coming into a competition, my advice would be to be at maintenance calories, and if not slightly on those days of bigger training, you're in a slight surplus. So what that means with the scale is, right, is that the scale might not budge down at all because we're not focusing on an intentional deficit. We're focusing on fueling our body for performance. Now, people that you constantly in a diet phase and placing high stress on their body through training can experiencing burning the candle at both ends. So for a lot of us women, this causes stress on our body over time and can play a huge role in our hormones and can often backfire and result in weight gain. So it is really important to sort of put your training into phases. So if you're coming into a race season, ideally, you want to be fueling your body, not so much focusing on the composition. Doesn't mean that we're going to gain 5 kilos. It just means that we're eating to the way we're performing to get maximum out of our results and our recovery. And then, you might be out of race season and you might go, okay, well, after that race season, I realize that I need to strengthen my glutes, my hamstrings, and my quads if we're looking at endurance racing. Well, then we might go into an intentional surplus, focus on a period of time of actually gaining muscle mass, followed by an intentional deficit. So then you can, strip off any adipose tissue that was gained during the time. Now, if you're doing this correctly, first and foremost, need to put a disclaimer in there, is that you're not going to see the scale increase 1 kilo, 2 kilos, 3 kilos per week. We're talking 100 grams, 200 grams. So over a period of, say, 4 to 5 weeks, it might only result in 1 kilo gain. Now, say there might be 300 grams of body fat that comes along with that. 1 week of a deficit, you'd be able to strip that off. So you've kind of got to work out it weighs itself out for the benefit of a bigger engine, just as an example. So there's periods of time that I think are great for cutting back, training, and focusing on maintaining. So like, say, for example, you're out of race season, we're not trying to perform, we're just going to go with our training back to maintenance, so keep that engine ticking over. And these are periods of time where you can look at different goals that might benefit your training, or this might be the time that you go, okay, like race season, I wasn't quite happy with my body composition. I'm going to do an intentional cut in this time. So then you pull your training back because you're not fueling your body enough to recover at its maximum. So we can't expect it to be doing the maximum volume we were doing coming into race season, if that makes sense. So the other thing, and I can relate to that in terms of powerlifting, is I have like an on season and an off season. So an on season's where, we have weight categories. So then therefore, it's power to weight ratio. So it's kind of fair in terms of who you're competing up against. And in the off season, the goal is to eat in maintenance or slightly in a surplus to gain as much muscle as you physically can to then display it at the comp. So intentionally, there's periods there where there is intentional slow weight gain to help my performance goals. And then there's an intentional cut period to help make weight prior to going into the comp season. So with that, what happens with my training going into comp season is that the training may have to pull back a little bit because I'm not eating to fuel that. So I guess to answer people's questions is there's intentional periods. So you have a structured deficit, you just get in and get it done. So you don't spend long periods of yo-yoing. You kind of set yourself 4 weeks, dial in and just get it done. So look at it like also training seasons, right? So there's different places, different parts of the year where you might focus on different things. And there's no right or wrong way, but I definitely suggest working with a coach and just sort of doing a verbal drop of like, these are all my goals and this is where I currently am. Like what's the best sort of phase to go into first? And on the flip side of this, the off season from your races is also a great time to focus on, as I said before, building muscle and improving your body composition. Which brings me to talking about body recomp, right? So you might see this posted a lot on social media and things like that. So body recomposition is kind of doing them both at once. The hard pill to swallow here, and where I feel like a lot of people aren't honest with the person that they're working with, is a body recomp can take years. So it takes time to do them both at once because you're not eating quite in a huge deficit and you're not eating in quite a huge maintenance to a surplus. So it's worth having a period of time where you're not eating in a super deficit, but you're maintaining and building muscle to allow your body to recomp. The recomp is where you eat on your bigger training days to support performance, and those days you eat on the higher end of the maintenance calories or even slightly over, and the days on your smaller days you eat at your maintenance calories or even slightly lower. So this is going to result in body recomposition over time. It's slow, it's a month-on-month process, like a 6 to 12 month goal usually. So body comp in like decreasing body fat and increasing muscle is everyone can do it with adequate protein intake and adequate strength training and load on that muscle mass. But in saying this, some people need a little bit more calories or slightly higher to build muscle. And this is all dependent on the training, their age, how long they've been training as well. So the longer you are training and the more consistent you are, things change as you advance as an athlete. So with all this info, it can be hugely confusing on which one is for you. And this is where, if you're serious about your performance goals, nutrition is one of the most important things to get the best desired outcome. And also being honest with yourself, with where you're at currently, and being practical of how long it'll take you to get there to your next goal. Because I think a lot of people, again, the way our brain works is we want instant reward for the littlest work possible. And depending on how big your goals are over a period of time, it can take months or years. So all that being said, if you are 100% set on doing the best performance you can coming into, say, a high rocks race or a race event, I highly recommend not putting your body through more stress by dieting in a deficit, because you're already placing more stress on your body with the load and volume of training to get maximum out of your performance. Then my other advice would be as well is really look at your body as a whole and imagine it with no adipose tissue, and be really honest with yourself going, do I actually need to intentionally build some muscle mass so when I do strip this body fat down to where I want to feel and how I want to look, that I have the adequate muscle there, which then means your training will slightly change. So you're putting adequate stress on those muscles to get them to respond, to get stronger and to slightly increase in size. And then this might mean that the focus on that number needs to lay off a little bit. And that is okay because you're in different phases. So to wrap up today's episode, and I thank you everybody for listening, I hope that all makes sense. I feel like I could go on to so many different tangents in regards to this, because I feel like we all want body recomp, but the 6 to 12 month thing is where it gets a lot of people, because they're like, oh, well, so I've got to keep doing this and, see little reward for big effort. But over time, it's like depositing into the bank account, right? You don't see the end goal straight away. You see tiny little amounts going in, but over time, you get to your end goal. That's body recomp in a nutshell. So I hope this helps you put into perspective that performance training or, asking your body to perform at its best ability does require different nutritional properties to somebody that just wants to lose body fat. Now, you can want them all. You just need to be honest of what phase that you're in now and what one you're prioritizing. So one of the podcasts that I did with Ishbel, she put that in a really good perspective. So capping on today's episode, it'd be the same, right? Looking at it as different dials: muscle building, fat loss, performance. So which dial do you have turned up at the moment and which ones need to get turned down? And if you want to do body recomp, well, you can have them all turned on halfway, but you can't expect 100% from all of them at once. So as I said, I really hope this helps and you got a lot out of this episode. So if you did like this episode, I do want you to share or, send it to a friend, or even just, share it and tag AMPT or Ash Cummins. I love seeing people listen because, obviously I really love recording these and sharing the knowledge with you guys. But this isn't, recommendations over the phone or, telling you what you should or shouldn't do. It's just giving you that little bit of science-backed information in terms of what phase are you in and what do you really want. And that's where you really need to get honest with yourself. Like, what phase are you in at the minute? And then, talking about the phases and what the adequate best body compositions for that, what we need to do, when we need to do it and how long we need to do it. So this is where working with a coach can be really beneficial to get maximum out of your body without trying to put too much stress on yourself. Because when you put too much stress on your body and you cannot recover, without recovery, we're going to have the opposite effect. So as I said, if you want to listen to this episode and re-listen to it, I definitely highly suggest it, because as I said, with my training personally, is I have different seasons where I focus on different things. And then that allows me to push and so the push and pull becomes a lot more even. Okay, so this time, right, I might be in an off season. So my focus and priority is my strength training and gaining muscle mass. Doesn't mean that I give away my running. It just means that the running becomes at a maintenance level where I'm ticking over the engine, because that's not my main priority. And then vice versa. So when I'm coming into a race season, my strength training may not be my main priority. So therefore the volume might decrease, or the load might decrease to allow me to pick up the runs, so then I'm not adding too much stress on my body and having the adverse effect. So again, thank you for joining me on today's episode. I hope I've helped you out with when to eat for your performance goals and how that your nutrition can play a huge role in what you're asking from your body. So until next time, guys, keep it real.